Hello everyone, book-based surfers. Today I have a question for you. I would like to know what motivates you to watch this channel. Are you photographers, curators, students, curious minds? You are starting to get to know me and our guests, and I would also like to get to know a little bit about the people who attend this cult. Let's call it cult. So, if you feel like it, write in the comments below. I'm Gabriele Chiapparini, welcome to Small Photobook Cult. Remember to like the videos if you like them, subscribe, and chat with us and our guests in the comments. Today's book is Gertrud. The care and the quantity of different papers used for this beautiful object make it a book that I really wanted in my collection and in this podcast. It's a project that transcends photography to explore the profound interplay of time, memory, and the untold stories of a small Swedish village. It's an exploration of identity and the very nature of truth in visual storytelling. Welcome to the episode 23 of Small Photobook. We are here with Maja Daniels. Hello Maja, it's great to have you here today.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, it's a big pleasure. So we can start speaking about the project. If you want to introduce what is Gertrud about?
Mm-hmm. Well, Getrud, I'm going to say it in the Swedish pronunciation of the word. So in Swedish, it's just a soft G. Mm-hmm. So it's like Gertrud, but it could be Gertrud or Gertrud or whatever. But I'll say it in the Swedish way, just to kind of channel the Swedishness into it. The book is called Gertrud, and it's based on the protagonist or a protagonist that the book sort of centers around. It's a real person who was alive in Sweden in the mid-1600s. Her full name was Gertrud Svensdotter, and essentially she has gone to history for all the wrong reasons, in a way. So I'm also kind of using her name for the title of the book to really kind of also highlight her destiny. But I'm also using her, sort of the story about her as a way in to think beyond and to think more, or to think further with her. And I'm kind of almost thinking about her destiny as something that is recurring across times. But the protagonist and the person lived in Sweden in a place called Älvdalen, semi-north Sweden, a small community where I make most of my work around. And in 1668, she was accused of having walked on water, right? So she was accused of sorcery, of witchcraft, because, of course, humans cannot walk on water. But to add to that accusation and to that story is that she was accused by a 9-year-old boy called Mats, who she just had a fight over a sandwich with when they were out herding goats. And regardless of this, the fact that it was a child who accused her, who was also angry with her, that this accusation became the starting point of the Swedish witch hunts, of a period, of a historical period called the Great Noise. So I think it was about 30 years of essentially mass hysteria. Accusations right to left. And the main importance and the main reason why this event became the kind of tipping point or the drip that made the water kind of overflow, it was essentially because Gertrud, she admitted to the accusation. So she said, yes, she had walked on water. But she did so after, which is documented very well in the protocols, in the church protocols. She did it after days of being imprisoned, of torture, of sexual kind of harassment, and of very, very long questionings. So her kind of admitting, or her way of kind of saying that she was guilty is, of course, under specific circumstances that are very questionable and that, of course, are also tainting to this story. But the book is not all about this. I'm just giving the context. But the book is based on this destiny or this story. And what I'm trying to do in this book is that I'm trying to kind of lift up under the kind of stones look at the kind of gaps in history, because all that we have, of course, from these events are the church records. It's what the kind of ruling, leading powerhouse wanted to keep and preserve, and that's what we have. And those are the few kind of scraps of actual, what do you say, like sources of information, and the rest is totally obliterated, hidden, or have gone lost. But essentially, what we do know is that there was a reason for the witch hunts or this kind of great noise to start off at this very time in this very place, and that's something that I'm interested in and wanted to investigate with images. So what I am trying to do is I'm trying to kind of like almost like reawaken, or like kind of let this culture that was eliminated, let this culture that was kind of left to die be like resuscitated or like reawoken, and in my own kind of, with the help of my own imagination, not even just imagination, actually kind of like making it, turning it alive through image making, trying to kind of look at a culture that was extremely important, but that has gone lost. And this culture was a culture in Sweden that was very strong and, of course, threatening from the perspective of the state and the church. It was a kind of a female-led culture that was based in these kind of forest pastures. It was an organization that, like smaller communities, they had to get organized just to survive, because life was quite poor in this area in Sweden. So what they did, and what like many areas in Sweden did, I think it exists in other places in Europe too, it was like a pasture centered kind of like small kind of agricultural and forestry organizations, so that when the summer came, you had to kind of move all of your animals quite far away from the community into the forest, so that they wouldn't graze on any of the land, because the land was so precious. You needed to grow crops on all the parts of the land. So basically it was like a system where the animals were kind of like herded back far up into the mountains and forests. And with the animals went the women. Men were not allowed to take care of cattle or animals, because it was a huge crime at the time for men to have sex with animals. So it was like a given that it was the role of women to take care of the animals. So off they went, women and animals, they went far into the forest, and they lived there half of the year, like the summer and spring. And then they took care of the animals, and they made sure that the whole communities had food for the winter. So they made butter and like other kind of like, things with the milk, cheese, etc. And this was a very well like functioning system, but it came with female figures within the communities that had a lot of power and had a lot of control over the communities. And when Sweden started becoming Christianized, this was something that was extremely questioned by the church. So, and Gertrud, as a figure or like as a real person, she actually grew up in a kind of a community like this. So when she got accused of walking on water and the priest asked her, she told the priest that she had been taught how to create or like make magic by many of the other women who she had like grown up with in these forest pastures. And so that's kind of how she came to be written into history. And I learned about this story when I was quite young from my grandmother. And I've never really been able to kind of let go. There's something so crazy to think that, or even banal, to think that a girl who fights with a boy over a sandwich becomes the kind of like, I don't know, like this figure that will kind of propel history into one of these very, very, very extreme moments in time. Because what happened afterwards was extreme. It was like, a mass execution of women and some men, and also of horrible events where children started accusing their own family members in some instances. And just a moment of extreme fear and I don't know, like extreme fear and anxiety, which is something that I feel is so relevant to talk about today. So there's something that, like, okay, this happened 400 years ago, but this, time is cyclical, and that's something that I also work a lot with in my work. And it just feels like we are at a crucial kind of time, or a similar kind of conflict in time, that then, like, similar to when this happened. So that's also why it felt relevant to kind of bring this to the light now, and to talk about it, and using photography, and to kind of anchor it in the now, because that's what photography kind of does. It anchors something into the present. So for me, like, I'm talking about this now also because I see, like, recurrences, or I see tendencies that make so much sense in a way, societal kind of shifts that are all based on fear and anxiety.
Yeah, it's a really powerful starting point all the time. Maja, I don't understand. Did you tell that you found this story the first time because of your mother?
My grandmother.
Grandmother.
My grandmother.
But it's like a story tale that the people used to tell, or
no, in a weird way, not. But it is like a legend. It's part of local history, but it's also part of national history. But to me, I remember her growing up, hearing about her almost like, to me, she was almost like a heroic figure. She was like, I don't know if any of you have heard of, like, Pippi Longstocking, or like some sort of like child character that had magical features, or like, Harry Potter or whatever. Like she to me, she was cool because she could walk on water. That's how I remember her from being young and being a child. But then, of course, the real history dawned on me, and in actual fact, what happened in Älvdalen, in this community, many years after these events, was complete just silence. Like, the lid was just put on, and people just tried to, like, move on with their lives. Of course, it must have been absolutely traumatizing for many generations, maybe even for my generation. Who knows? But it's not something that has been widely talked about at all. In fact, not even in not in any kind of level of relevance, not locally either. There is one memorial site in the community, but it's even placed on the wrong place. Like, it's not even the right site. And all of these names of the women who were accused and executed, they have not been erased from the church books. So it's really like a question of, like, okay, we'll just put the lid on and try to move on, which I can understand. But it also kind of really says that to me, like, this is something that actually, it kind of speaks so much for where we're at today as well, because of this kind of not to mention, like, this complete silence. And actually, this book came out of this book before the work was a book. It was an exhibition, and I called the exhibition "On the Silence of Myth," partly also to kind of address this culture of silence that is very kind of like connected to these events, but that's also connected to the notion of myth. Myth, something that is mythological, is also extremely dangerous because it remains sort of untouchable or difficult to kind of grasp. And to me, photographs are similar. Like, photographs are quite similar in the way that they function. They can allude to a lot of things, but they're very inspecific. I don't even know if that's a word, but you know what I mean? Like, they're not very specific. So they can they can hint at a lot, but they don't give a lot of answers. And I feel like there's a connection there between this, like the notion of the myth and how an image kind of functions. So that's also why I'm trying to like rewrite this myth, or trying to make at least one alternative version with my book. So it's also to try and give Gertrud another context to exist in, not just that horrible context that she has been stuck within for so many years. To try and like, I don't know, I wouldn't maybe call it like a resurrection or something, but to just give her an alternative context. And the book for me is all about bringing that very strong female-centered culture to life and to believe in its powers.
Like starting from the cover, that I have to say that the book itself is really beautiful. You decide to use a lot of different paper, and also the cover specifically, it's really mysterious and weird, because we have this picture that is it archive?
Yep.
And then you decide to put this little
what would you call it? What do you think it is?
It's really hard to say. I think it can be something connected with the nature, maybe.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's interesting because this figure was actually found. It was found inscribed in a firehouse in one of the forest pastures, like in one of these places that were somehow connected to the witch hunts in Älvdalen and like within the region. But no one really knows anything about this figure. But I found it in a book about myths and legends connected to Älvdalen. But it doesn't really kind of come with a lot of explanation. It kind of just says that it's a figure that looks a bit like a devil. And I'm assuming that kind of like diabolization, or like the way that it's just been associated with the devil, is probably because of the horns. It kind of has like weird eyes, like cyclopic eyes, and then it has like maybe it has 4 legs. It has a pipe in the mouth, and then it has these 2 sticks in the in each, like a stick in each hand. But when I look at this, like I'm so convinced that this is some sort of like pre-Christian pagan figure, and that I also am quite convinced that it's a female figure. It seems to have breasts. It seems to have like breasts and a belly button and a vagina. It could also be like a penis, but I think it's a vagina. It also seems to be like that it's almost like shape-shifting. It's like becoming a bird or something, or it's becoming an insect, or it's like part human, part animal. But then also because of the pipe in the mouth and the sticks in the hands, it feels like it's connected to some sort of ritual or magic, because the pre-Christian kind of traditions involved, or like rituals always involved smoke. The idea of the magic stick also comes from the fact that people actually used sticks when being invoked in different rituals. So the reason that that I put this, or that I wanted to have this figure on the cover, is also to really change the association, go away from this kind of like simple connection with the devil, even though of course we're going to have it. So we're going to have this kind of like, ooh, strange, mysterious, but then to almost like treat the whole book as a grimoire, or like a context for the figure, to try and build the world connected to the figure. And of course, this is just my subjective interpretation. But the idea is that there was this like diabolic kind of turning, and this is like common. This happened everywhere in like religious wars. What happens to strong religious symbols of a people that gets kind of taken over? Well, the new religion is built on top of the old. Like all the sacrificial sites that were pagan that exists in Sweden, what happened? Well, they built churches on those sites, so that like sacred sites remain, but the religion changes. Like that's a strategy that's used across all kind of continents and all different religions. It's to try and get people to connect the old with the new. So I'm kind of using our assumptions, and I'm trying to connect or like make new connections from the old. And the reason I've put the archival picture behind, well, that's also, of course, to connect this kind of like devil with this, the really kind of devilish, or like this, the association that we have of the devil with the most innocent, you know, the young child, the girl, but also to show that there is an inherent kind of danger in the young girl when it comes to like patriarchy, the kind of like state control, like the child, and the kind of processes of control that this kind of seemingly very innocent figure has to go through in order to be like, I don't know, like normalized or like within the norm. Anything that goes without the norm, that's the danger, and that's the scary aspects of societal kind of construct. So I don't know. I mean, the cover is made to want you to open the book, right?
Yeah,
So
but
that was a very long-winded answer.
no, I think it's I don't know. I'm just listening. It's super fascinating, and I told you like before, I didn't found so many information about this project. Like I found the essentials, but I think it's super interesting to hear directly from you. It's amazing.
Good.
So.
Nice. I mean, I could say also that the archival picture is made by a man called Ten Lars Persson, and he lived in the region. He lived in Älvdalen 100 years ago. So he was one of the founders of like one of the like the local heritage foundation in Älvdalen. And when I first went there, I discovered his archive because he was one of the founders and he didn't have any children of his own. All of those plates, more than 5,000 plates, are kept within the local heritage foundation. And that's also the archive that I worked with for my first book, Älvdalia. So it's a collaboration, you could say, between me and Ten Lars, this man. And what was so intriguing and interesting was that when I started making this new book, the first book was called Älvdalia, and it was like also focused on this community of Älvdalen, but it was looking at their very specific language. So I was looking at like the connection between my work, my images, and this archival kind of images. And I was sort of creating a dialogue to mimic the notion of language. So it was a dialogue in images. So in that book, all of Ten Lars's images were black and white, and my images were in color. But for this second book, because I was now interested in myth, you know, I leave language behind and I go in to think about myth. I also had to kind of like blur those boundaries. But I went back into his archive looking for Gertrud. And that's also what I've been doing with my own images. I've been trying to look for her in the gaze of girls that I've come across. So I kind of employed the same strategy when looking through the archive as when I photographed myself. But the difference this time is that it's not very clear when it's my image or when it's an archival image. Sometimes it's very clear, sometimes it's perhaps a little bit less clear.
Yeah, you have to say that in this work particularly, it's quite hard.
Good, that's the point. That's the point. The point is also not to necessarily give the work a time. So for the work to kind of float across times, I'm quite intrigued by how photography can kind of exist in different times at the same time. There's something very much connected to the notion of time when working with the medium of photography, and it's a completely different kind of time than when you're working with film. So I'm quite interested in that, and I'm quite interested to think of my book as an experimental film that has different kind of times within it somehow.
Because we are watching it, you decide to use the full bleed in the spread, in the pages. Why?
Well, that's very much also to mimic the cinematic. So for the images to be completely like taking over the page. But then I have the white pages in between, but all images, except for a few exceptions, are like full bleed. So the idea is to really immerse the viewer into the world. I'm really interested in like this idea of world building, or how we could use images to create moods or tensions, etc. So that's what I've been. That's the reason for the full bleed.
It's something that I don't like so much in a lot of projects, but in this one it seems to be the right one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know about it. I just knew that it had to be this way for this work. And then, of course, we just went past this first chapter. Like, the book is kind of like constructed in different chapters, and it was important for me that the different kind of sections had a different kind of feel to it, not just like visually, but also like tactically, or like to use different papers and to kind of really create different intensities within the sequence. So we start off with this black and white section that then gets sort of interrupted by this very colorful section with a lot of fire. I call it the fire section. I mean, quite logically.
Are you saying that the first chapter is all this and then?
No, the first kind of chapter is like, it goes across the whole book, and then it has 2 interruptions. So this is the first chapter, but it just gets interrupted, and then it takes, it continues after the fire section. It's almost like the fire section. If this was a film, this would be like a flashback, or, like a different kind of memory that takes over for a bit. And then you kind of get thrown back into the main sequence or the main chapter. And I feel like there are some, like, the main chapter is like, it has a bit of a, like, I'm hoping that it has some sort of forward action that then gets interrupted in these different kind of like sections. Like, for example, now we're entering the second section of what I call maybe the beginning of the archive section, where things kind of really go a bit strange. Now we enter into this section also where, like, I'm using these kind of like colorful landscape images that are quite like faded and dull, and there are much more archive parts, like archive images in this section. And I guess for me, this is really like the heart of the book. Like, this is the climax in a weird way, if you talk in film terms. And this is also where you kind of get like these repeated gazes of these young girls, mainly from the archive. You get this gaze, like you get the gaze throughout the book, also through my portraits. But in this section, it kind of really goes. Also, when you kind of enter this section, something is kind of happening in the sequence. There's a little bit perhaps magic going on that propels us into this kind of archival, strange color section. And then we're thrown out of it, and then we come back into the main section, if you want.
But Maja, are you speaking about this part?
Yes, yeah.
So I have some questions. First of all, now here we can see you like broke this rule of the full bleed, and you start to have this.
And also in the book, it's a different paper here. It can like each like the fire section has a different paper, and this is also now on a different paper in the book.
Yeah, like if you have the chance, because I think it's really a pity to just watch the PDF, because the object itself is so well done. You have all these different papers in the different part of the book, and like if you that are listening have the chance, maybe not to buy, just to watch it in a bookshop, go and.
If you go back a few pages from here, you can see that there are multiple, like a few more pages, that you see the same girl, a few portraits, or like, you have this bird here. And then if you go forward again now, you're kind of from there, and then you go forward. To me, there's like, this is the build-up that's still within the first chapter. And then if you continue, there's almost like some action happening here. This bird happens, and then boom. In the book, that white page is quite transparent before you turn. So if you go back one page, exactly. So that page, this page in the book is very transparent. So you can kind of hint the next picture even before you turn the page. And then when you turn the page, you realize that the paper is very thin. And the feel is quite different. So it's almost like you you touch your way into this third section of the book that then continues. It breaks the rule with the full bleed, and it breaks the rule with the paper. And then, of course, it gives you a hint of something happening, but because of this holding hands, and this sequence of holding hands, if you could go forward, ends up in an image that is a hand holding a bush. So for me, that's also kind of like to connect something that is so inherently kind of human to something that's considered, like beyond human or non-human. And so there's this kind of like general division between, man and nature, or culture and man. And that's what I'm trying to kind of like do something with here. And then we enter into these landscape images that are very much broken, almost like they're extremely overexposed and quite strange image. Like you couldn't really tell if they are really old images or if they're not. So that's also where I'm really playing around with the tropes here. I'm playing around with the ideas of like, what does an archive breathe, and what kind of truth claim can an archive kind of hold on you, and how can I play with that? So of course, all of these archival images, they're 100 years old. They're not 400 years old. So they don't in any way represent the period of time that I'm actually kind of talking about. I'm talking about the now and 400 years ago. But it's quite interesting how we read images differently. Like we almost like seek out Gertrud differently in these archival sections. It's almost like we think for some reason we want to believe that that's her that we're looking at. But so that's quite interesting to me to kind of play around with and to kind of like mess it messes with our minds somehow. So that's the intention, to kind of break up these notions of time as like linear and specific. And, who knows, maybe actually, it's almost like Gertrud is looking back at us through all of these gazes, but she's also kind of hidden. And I appreciate that. It's not about like trying to claim that she is one of these. It's almost like she is multitude and she's beyond human form. She also exists in the wind and in the trees and in the landscape. And it's to kind of like try to claim something that is bigger and broader than just the human form.
Yeah, it's also look a bit like to spread this role of Gertrude to all these people.
Yeah, like it could have been anyone, it could have been absolutely anyone. And that's really a part of what I'm, of how history was actually written. She was just this figure who ended up being accused by someone at the wrong moment in time. And all of us is also her. So,
yeah. Also because it happens. It happened to her by chance, but it could be anybody.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And so also linked to what we were saying before starting to record, I think it can be really interesting this moving this attention on a single person that is experienced something, or that is the focus or on a historical events, and wide up a bit and thinking that it happened to her, but could happen to anybody and can happen to us also,
and can still happen today.
In different way. We are not
absolutely, and that's also why I think to put this kind of to really kind of question the innocence somehow, or to highlight maybe the innocence, because there is something inherently innocent with being a child, and especially being a young girl. But also there is an absolute threat in history that has come from the power of the little girl, or this pre-pubertal kind of figure that is about to perhaps realize the power that is within her, or the power that she could potentially have over, I mean, men has always feared women in some regard, and that's interesting when you kind of really break it down, and when you bring it to this kind of base level and you look at these faces and you think, oh gosh, like she, a 12-year-old girl that becomes the center of all of this. It's quite shocking. Yet maybe not.
Yeah, but I think in that portrait, I can also see a lot of power.
Well, that's good. Like, that's the point. The point isn't to show these faces or figures as victims. It's also to show that their potential power. And that's, some say that this book is scary. I have a hard time like understanding that notion. But I guess there is this kind of threat also in some of the gazes, this kind of like looking back and facing, facing you and like gripping you with this gaze that also, of course, it's all about like visual connotations and like horror movies perhaps, or, The Exorcist or whatever. But it's there, that inherent threat. It's like an archaic almost like story now. And that I'm playing with these visual tropes, I'm playing with, that's the joy of making images. You can like rely on general kind of interpretation, and you can play with that. And that I'm interested in, within my work. How can I evoke feelings in the viewer, and how can I bring you along in this story that I'm creating? And of course, with photography, like, it's such a poor tool in many ways. It doesn't like give a lot of context, or it doesn't say a lot of things in and of itself. It's all about, how you put this multitude of images together and how you kind of like stitch. And I mean, this is interesting as well. You have these like witch aspects, the black cat or the cats, even in like Egypt, like ancient Egypt, the cats, they were kind of like associated with magic and or like old spirits. Like cats have always been like considered this animal that had this spiritual kind of potential connection. But then, of course, also with the real, how do you say, like the caricature of the witch. What's that? Well, it's a woman with a big hat or sitting on a broom or a stick. And then there's a black cat that she hangs out with. So, I mean, of course, I'm really also just leaning back onto the very kind of basic myth here. But while doing that, I'm really trying to kind of imbue or like really like drench it also with female power and an alternative to the myth, because the myth is always so simplified. Of course, it's just the basic. It doesn't like, it's just like a box that's closed. So I'm just trying to like open up the lid of the box and like start to like really kind of like try to remember or dig around in my like DNA somehow, to connect and to kind of like put a little bit more details onto this kind of like forgotten aspect of history.
Yeah, I agree that can be like this gaze can be scary, but to me also brings some hope.
Well, I mean, it's also like anything that has to do with nature, like this sublime, the feeling of like something that's beautiful or like sublime, that's also something that is quite scary. We're in awe of nature, but that also means that we're scared of it because it's bigger and much more powerful than us. And that's what the whole kind of romantic idea is based on. It's also based on fear, beauty and fear.
And then again, this aspect of the nature, probably this one is one of the pictures that describe that thing that the women were going out, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So just perhaps 300 years later, but it's still like, that's what's so fascinating as well. Like many of these places are still standing. They're still kind of like, even actually still active. People go there in the summers and they bring their animals and they kind of still lead the same culture. It's on a very small scale, of course, but what's interesting is that I could go to many of these locations and photograph there. So many of the images were made in these locations where this culture have once been very, very strong. And then I kind of like, of course, I'm kind of like connecting these, I don't know what you could call it, maybe like aspects of like documents with the creations that are like me just basically making up a story and like using aspects of the landscape, creating like the myth that I want to kind of like load these images with as well. So the first image is like maybe a good example of that. It's like the hands that are holding, it's like a still life. It's kind of like, for me, it's like I call it the vulva. It's like almost like it becomes the symbol of the vagina, like a female kind of like reproductive organ, or like this idea of nature and femininity and like creating of life. But it sets the tone for the rest of the book as to kind of like, enter into this kind of myth that I'm making, or like that I'm creating around this kind of story that is based on historical events. So it's kind of like mixing, mixing fact and fiction somehow, through also by using objects and like to load objects. That's what I find photography so brilliant at. Like photography is so bad at many things, but what they can do is like I can point my camera at something and I can say, this is important. But then I don't have to tell you why or how. I can just say, look at this. This is important. And then you have to kind of like make up your mind as to how it's important or why it's, like you make up the story yourself in your head. And that's what's so kind of great. And then it hints at something that's perhaps like there's this connection between the index, like the photographical kind of like the object, and the uncanny, and something that's like beyond the object, or something that kind of like alludes to something like like bigger or like stronger or more powerful. So I'm like playing around with these objects and like trying to hint throughout the book with these like different, some of the objects also like reoccur. They come back in each section of the book. Like, so some images are actually kind of repeated.
Like what? Which one?
There's a stump, a wooden stump. If you go to the fire section, you'll see it. Like that one. Like go back. Yeah, that one on the left.
Yes, this one.
That one comes back in all three sections. So it's almost like different interpretations of what there it was. Like, so it's almost like little clues as to how these kind of like chapters or how these stories are interconnected. There's the stump again.
Yeah. Are these archival pictures cropped or not?
Yes. Some of them are heavily cropped. Some of them are a little cropped. Some of them are not cropped, but most of them are cropped. All the portraits, I would say, are cropped from bigger kind of group pictures.
Yeah, a bit connecting what you said just some seconds before, that you can point something and say this is important. So cropping in an image sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. So of course I'm using archivals images, and then I'm perhaps more interested in some details within an image than the full image.
Yeah, and also there are a lot of like you said before, a lot of hands holding things. There are hands holding hands.
Yes.
A lot.
Yes.
But then you have this one that before you to say something, like to me, it's to see an object like this. It reminds me as, I don't know, like an ingredient for a potion. What is this for you in reality?
In reality, it's like a wooden stump that had been burned. And it looks like it has the shape of a heart, but it also almost looks like a grenade, like a hand grenade. So for me, it just became like this object of like power, like something that someone holds at a specific point, so connected to ritual as well. But something that's quite like it seemed, and it's very beautiful actually, the object, when you look at it, because it's been burnt. It kind of like has this kind of like strange shade to it, and because it's a root and it's been lying in water, it's kind of like driftwoody kind of vibe, softness to it. I was just really mesmerized by it. I found it and I've kept it, and it just became one of these objects that had to become important for the series. And a lot of the objects are like wooden objects or connected to nature. And that's also, of course, as to me, like this, like the forest becomes a site that holds memory, and a site that holds knowledge that we may not even be aware of. And like trees are like the oldest organisms alive. Some trees are more than 400 years old, so they've been standing in the same place across, like, throughout this whole time. So like they connect like us with the 17th century in such a kind of a clear and brilliant way. And so for me, like, forest is culture. It's like a cultural site. It's a site of cultural value and cultural kind of knowledge, of memory. And so, like, for me, to speak about the forest is to kind of like to also really deeply and profoundly to speak about memory. And I guess like it at times like these like forest pastures where all of this took place, this whole kind of like culture that I'm trying to kind of revive, this life that people led, it was so kind of closely connected to the land, And today we have this, due to kind of capitalism and like the kind of urbanization, we've kind of lost the connection, and we have this tendency to just view the forest as a resource. It is a resource, but it's far more than just a resource. So that's also why I'm using wood as objects, and like these natural kind of materials as objects that I'm trying to imbue with kind of meaning or like power or like some sort of intriguing aspect of the storytelling within the book, is to kind of like point to the connection that we have with our surroundings, and in this case, the forest.
In this picture, we can see two hands carrying something really fragile, and I don't know if it was your intention or not, but because you are speaking about this topic, I think it is really like it works really well. There is the connection, but also the fact that in some way we have to take care about it, about the surrounding, the natures.
Yeah. And even the hand, the hand with the strange wooden object, it could have easily been turned into the bird.
The first one, the first image of the book.
Yeah, exactly. No, the bird that you had now.
This one, yeah.
And the heart kind of figure. If you go back to where you were, I don't know which way, that one. To me, it could also be like that turns into a bird.
Yeah, but in both,
they're similar.
In both, there is a really delicacy. I don't know if is it the right word to holding these two things. It's something that feel like precious in both. Also in the first one.
Yeah. It's that's good. That's good because it is precious.
Yeah, it is.
All of these aspects are extremely precious, and it's like our inheritance. It's our duty to care about these things, however big or small. But what an image can do is it can really point at something. It could really say like, look, let's really look at this. Let's consider it for its value, for its inherent kind of like value. And I'm not like shy to use like symbolism or metaphor or anything to kind of like get to this point of attention, or like giving attention, or trying to like evoke feelings connected to these aspects.
And Maja, what kind of reflection or conversation do you hope Gertrud will spark among its audience?
Oh, I think that there's like a natural connection between the witch hunts and today. Mass hysteria. I think that we're entering into a phase in history that is completely mass hysterical on so many levels. But I think, of course, mainly connected to climate change, the way that we are choosing to turn a blind eye, but not just to climate change, also to like, any type of fear towards the other. There's this like populist tendencies in politics today that really wants to turn groups of people against each other. And that's all to do with, fear, affect, and it's the exact same procedures that took place during the witch hunts and during the kind of like when the church really kind of, stated its power over populations. So for me, it's also like a way of saying, like we have a tendency to kind of like look at history and to think of it as something in the past, but we're also using the way we interpret history as a way of shaping our present. So what we decide, how we decide to talk about history is also shaping our present and thus also future. So for me, this work is really about like looking back and trying to look forward at the same time. It's trying to like almost like map out. Really, this whole work has been made with the desire to live in this culture that I'm trying to revive. So it's like, it's dead serious. It's not something that I'm just doing like for fun. I'm doing it because I want to see this culture exist. And so the first thing to do is imagine it. And then perhaps the second like steps or the third steps could be like to actually make steps towards actually preserving or making it happen or like trying to remember or whatever the processes have to be. That's what I want to actually like make or accomplish with the work. I don't know, like even the fact that this book now exists and I can talk to you about it and like to even talk about all of these aspects of history, but to put it in the context of actually like mirroring the present, it gives me hope.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And Maja,
Good.
This is one of that episode where I wrote down a lot of questions and I'm not going to ask because you like introduced the work in a so clear and so deep way that...
Good.
Is there something that you want to add? Like otherwise I'm starting with the standard 3 questions that I ask at the end of this episode.
No, I don't think, no, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Okay, so I start. Do you have a specific kind of music that you suggest to listen watching this book? It can also be no.
I'm not sure. Maybe anything like with some weird like flute or like blow instruments that are perhaps old, like folk, kind of like some strange sounds or like female shouting in the woods. Like there is a connection between like the herding of the kind of pastoral herding of animals and this specific moment in time is that women were like, for the first time in a very long time, like, or like it disappeared then with Christianity, but you had to call for the animals and you had to use your voices to really like, because the animals were grazing like freely in the forest. Like they were not like kept within any realms. They were like left in the morning, like to go out, and then they would come back at night. And sometimes like towards the end of the summers, when the mushrooms would appear in the forest, like the cows would eat the mushrooms and become a little bit like woozy. They wouldn't come back like in the evenings, like in a good time. So then the women had to like call for the animals, and they would like scream and shout. And this kind of like way of using your voices is like, it's super liberating and super empowering. So like actually someone has written like an academic paper, like making a connection between like metal music or like heavy metal or something like that kind of like, and this like specific shouting that the women were doing in the forest. So I don't know, like something that's just like fucking powerful.
It's a really nice...
That's my answer.
No, it's a really nice description of the specific kind of sound. And if it don't exist yet, maybe we can create it, or you can create it.
Yeah, I mean, but you could also, like, if you're really interested, you could Google kulning, Kulling, and then you'll just hear. But it's like something that's kind of like lyrical and magical sounding. It's not like ugly shouting. It's like a really high pitch scream. from a woman. But you have to be standing on like a quite a high point in the landscape and then it echoes, across the land, and it's cool. So listen to that.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I can link it below the episode. Do you learn something with this project that can help a new photographer to do a better job? An advice?
Maybe just to really follow your desire. And when I say follow your desire, it's like do what you want, like just follow your urge. Like so many of these images, like I had no idea why I took them or made them. It wasn't clear to me at the time. I just knew I wanted to make them. And I just knew I wanted to be in these places, and I wanted to connect with this kind of with the story and with the history, and to see where that would take me. I had at some point I was like, this is not even gonna be anything. I'm just doing it for my own desire, because this is exactly what I want to do. I didn't want to do anything else. I just wanted to be in these places and photograph. And so, yeah, to trust your inner kind of desire and to let that be part of your image making, because sooner or later, I think it will make sense and it will transpire. It will, like, if you are deeply connected with your work, then it will connect others with the work afterwards.
Yeah, I'm moving my head saying yes. You cannot see it, but I was yes. It's really true. I agree 100%. The very last question, Maja, is can you suggest us a book to have in the podcast in the future? A book and a photographer?
Oh, it would have to be, but now I don't know the title. Oh, shit. Pia Gilmuth.
Which one?
Let's see. It's called, I should know this by heart, Flowers Drink the River. It was also released last year, and it's the most stunning work I've ever seen. And yeah, they are like, Pia, she's incredible. And have a look at the book if you haven't already. It's like, it's so dark and so beautiful and so kind of like mesmerizing and strange. The first thing you see, you open up the book and you see like a house that's lit on fire, and then you have a white horse lying in front of it.
Yeah, I saw it in Paris Photo. It's really beautiful, but I still don't have it. It's on my list.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing. I have another book that is The Creek, I think, from Void.
Yeah.
That one is really beautiful.
Yeah, and then the At Night Gardens Grow. It's also beautiful.
Yeah.
But my favorite is really this last one.
Okay, let's try.
It's my really best. It's my favorite of last year.
So you speak about this book with really a lot of passion. Maybe we can do the episode together if you want. It can be really nice. I always invite other people to do the episode, and no one still find the...
I would love that. I would love to talk about this book.
We can do it.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. Also, she has this picture of an owl in her book.
Yeah.
And this owl in flight, and the little legs, and I don't know. I mean, it's like, it's too much. It's just beyond amazing photography. Like, the photography is incredible.
That is a really good starting point anyway. Yeah, I know that all the time that I saw that book, that it was 2 times, I was really amazed. The problem is that in Paris Photo, I just finished all my money the first 2 hours.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Yeah,
it's a huge fair. So if you start to go through the tables.
And do you have a policy? Do you have a policy that you want to have the book for the episodes that you record?
No, I want to have.
Yeah, but you don't have to. Or
no, I don't have to. But I think it's really it's quite important to have the physical book, because let's talk about your book. If I don't have the object in my hand, I'm not able to feel it, like to touch the paper. And of course, like the PDF, it's like pretty enough, but you miss a lot of different things that you can only see in the book. For example, you said that the transparent paper let you see the images before you turn the page. I think all these aspects can, I don't know, starting really nice part of the conversation. So But no,
I agree.
I have a different policy that is mainly like from Camilla, my partner, that is don't spend too much in the book fair, so a kind of budget. But it never works. Like we overrule all the time this rule. So, but it's good to know.
It's crazy, but sometimes you just have to have the object.
Yeah. I agree. Maja, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and it was really interesting to me.
Thank you for having me.
And it's a pity we're not going to meet in Arles, but it's going to happen probably in another festival.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So thank you to everybody. Bye-bye. And bye, Maja.
Bye. Thank you.
See you next time.